everyone, and welcome to another Tempo Strategy Wild Hearthstone video. The madness at the Darkmoon Faire had a serious impact on the Wild meta in more ways than one. We've seen several new cards supercharge and redefine old archetypes, and we've also seen nerfs from the latest balance patch, both of which caused a shift in the Wild format's balance of power. After the dust has settled, some decks retain their spots at the top along with a few new contenders, while some other top-tier powerhouses have fallen by the wayside. As always, this means some powerful staple and tech cards are everywhere, and some have fallen off the map completely. Which cards are the biggest winners and losers of Darkmoon Faire and the 19.2 balance patch? Let's take a closer look at 5 cards that have disappeared, and 5 more cards you're bound to see a ton of on your next climb to legend. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Tempo Strategy YouTube channel and to turn notifications on to stay up to date with our Wild Hearthstone content. As always, we're going to start with the top 5 losers of the meta, starting with number 5, Genn, Greymane. The Darkmoon Faire meta hasn't been kind to decks like Even Shaman and Even Warlock, and while these decks weren't affected by the recent nerfs, they also didn't receive any solid cards from the new set, so they haven't been able to keep up with their top-tier superstars like Reno Priest and Secret Mage. Both of those decks are especially strong against Even Shaman in particular, and as for Even Warlock, compare it to Darkglare Warlock, which is even better at summoning cheap giants and damaging itself for value than Even Warlock could ever hope to be. Until these decks get some serious upgrades or the top decks see some serious nerfs, decks built around Genn Greymane's discounted hero power are doomed to sit on the sidelines. Next, let's talk about one of the hottest tech cards of the Scholomance Academy era, Nerub'ar Weblord. Nerub'ar Weblord was a staple in aggro druid, and it saw some play in decks like Reno Mage and Even Shaman, where its role was to shut down opposing battlecry minions. Many popular decks of the Scholomance meta were heavily reliant on battlecry minions to function, so an early Nerub'ar Weblord backed by buffs and other board control tools could shut some opponents out of the game completely. So why is Nerub'ar Weblord gone in the Darkmoon Faire meta when there are still plenty of powerful battlecry minions worth shutting down? Well, as it stands now, Nerub'ar Weblord doesn't have a good home. Aggro Druid has fallen out of favor after the nerf to Voracious Reader, and most of the remaining aggro decks revolve around Baku the Mooneater and simply can't run Nerub'ar Weblord at all. For most other popular decks, Nerub'ar Weblord is difficult to play since it disrupts your own battlecry minions, so it's simply not a good fit. Altogether, if you're looking for a tech card to bring to the Darkmoon Faire, you're going to want to look elsewhere. Moving on to staple class cards, there are definitely some wild cornerstones that have seen better days, and Voidcaller is among them, coming in as a loser number 3. Once upon a time, it was hard to imagine a Warlock deck without Voidcaller at its core to help sneak some massive demons into the board. Even as recently as Scholomance Academy, you could see decks like Cube Warlock and Reno Warlock tearing up the top tiers of ladder, but nowadays Reno Warlock is more of a niche deck than ever, and Cube Warlock is basically extinct. So what happened? Big Priest and Secret Mage have returned to prominence thanks to madness at the Darkmoon Faire. Cube Warlock is simply too slow to deal with Big Priest's endless waves of big monsters and Secret Mage's relentless damage, especially since those decks are now supercharged with new cards from the latest set. As for Reno Lock, it's a fine option for die-hard Reno fans, but it's a hard sell for Warlock players in general when Darkglare Warlock and Discard Warlock are 2 of the best decks to beat. With the 2 best Voidcaller decks struggling in the Darkmoon meta, Voidcaller is taking a break from the top tiers for now. Speaking of staple class cards, our number 2 loser is Aluneth, another staple card that's been left behind in the Darkmoon Faire meta despite Secret Mage being one of the most powerful decks in the format. Wait a minute, we're talking about Aluneth, which was once considered one of the most broken draw engines of all time? How is it possible? Powerful new cards for Secret Mage were released with madness at the Darkmoon Faire that shockingly left Aluneth in the dust. Rigged Fairgain is a particularly potent draw card in the early game, and since you can often play it without spending mana, you can usually draw your extra cards without giving up any tempo. Let's also consider Sage, Seer of Darkmoon, which directly fills the 6 mana spot for Secret Mage, except this 6 mana power card comes with a 5/5 body and is less likely to kill you in fatigue. With these 2 new cards in the mix, Secret Mage has moved on, and since no other mainstream mage decks are making use of this card, Aluneth is yet another former wild staple left without a home. Our last big loser of the Darkmoon Faire meta was once considered one of the most powerful cards of all time, even after the card itself was nerfed. Yes, we're talking about Open the Waygate, and oh how the mighty have fallen. Quest Mage was once considered overpowered and oppressive, but ever since Evocation was nerfed, Quest Mage has been struggling to regroup. With no new cards from Darkmoon Faire and some of its worst matchups receiving some serious upgrades, upgrades, Quest Mage found itself left in the dust. Not only that, but the other staple Quest deck, Reno Quest Mage, has also dropped out of the meta in favor of other Highlander builds like Reno Secret Mage. With Darkglare Warlock filling the format's degenerate combo niche for now, Quest Mage players have mostly moved on. Is it a good thing that Open the Waygate is no longer viable, or is it a bad thing that it was basically power crept out of the meta? The jury's still out on that one. Now let's talk about the big winners of the Darkmoon Faire meta in Wild, starting with number 5, Baku the Mooneater. Unlike even decks built around Genn Greymane, odd decks with Baku the Mooneater continue to thrive at the Darkmoon Faire. Odd Paladin, for instance, received several card upgrades from Darkmoon, like Oh My Yogg, Carnival Barker, and Lothraxion the Redeemed, and the ever-flexible Odd Rogue has added Prize Plunderer for extra board control as well. Even Odd Warrior still has a niche in farming aggressive decks, despite seeing no major updates from the new set. But it's Odd Demon Hunter that's received the biggest boost thanks to the new Darkmoon All-Star, Stilt Stepper. With Stilt Stepper, Odd Demon Hunter has shifted to an aggressive low curve that deals relentless face damage and never seems to run out of gas. The Voracious Reader nerf might have taken Aggro Druid out of the equation, but for Odd Demon Hunter, changing Reader to cost 3 mana actually adds a new card draw engine to the deck's arsenal. Altogether, Baku the Mooneater remains a cornerstone of Wild, and she's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. The number 4 winner on our list is Shadow Essence, the classic Big Priest cornerstone spell that got a new lease on life thanks to 2 new cards from the Darkmoon Faire, Palm Reading and Blood of G'huun. For a spell-heavy deck like Big Priest, Palm Reading is a serious upgrade since its discount effect typically has multiple cards in hand and acts almost like Emperor Tharazan in the early game. Casting Palm Reading on turn 3 sets you up to cast Shadow Essence on turn 4 with the coin and get the big minion train online well ahead of schedule. It's a crucial upgrade to Big Priest's minion pool that supercharges Shadow Essence even further. An early Shadow Essence that summons 2 5/5 taunts is difficult for many decks to overcome, and even if they do, Big Priest has plenty of resurrection effects to bring these giant taunts back and lock away the game for good. Thanks to this new synergy between Shadow Essence, Palm Reading, and Blood of G'huun, Big Priest is back on the map and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Next up at number 3, we have Raza the Chained, another Priest cornerstone that headlines one of the strongest decks in the entire format, Reno Priest. Skullman's Academy was exceptionally kind to Reno Priest cards with cards like Lorekeeper Polkout and Mindrender Lucia, and Darkmoon Faire continued the kindness with cards like Insight and Palm Reading, but perhaps the biggest boon of them all occurred during the most recent wave of nerfs, when Raza the Chained was not among the nerfed cards. Indeed, Reno Priest is packed with many powerful cards that could be taken down a notch, but with the exception of Lorekeeper Polkout, it doesn't appear any of these cards were on Team 5's radar. In Lorekeeper Polkout's case, while it's true that the card is technically weaker after the change to its mana cost, it still fits into Reno Priest's game plan seamlessly and ensures that the Raza the Chained plus Shadow Reaper Anduin combo comes together without a hitch. Overall, Reno Priest continues to be a meta tyrant, but can Raza the Chained remain unchained forever? We hope Team 5 sees Reno Priest continue dominance in the post-nerf meta and takes it into account for the next round of nerfs. Speaking of dominance, Secret Mage as a deck is the biggest winner of the Darkmoon Faire meta. With the additions of Rigged Fair Game, Occult Conjurer, and Sage Seer of Darkmoon, Secret Mage has reached a critical mass of power with all of its over-the-top damage, disruptive secrets, cost reductions, AoE board clears, and extra draw power. It's hard to point to any card as a bigger winner than the others by itself, but if we had to choose one, it would be Arcane Flakmage coming in at number 2 on our list. At its core, Wild is a fast and aggressive format, and even a deck like Secret Mage can fall behind on board easily against decks like Aggro Druid, Odd Paladin, Kingsbane Rogue, and even Shaman. Arcane Flakmage turns that all around by giving Secret Mage consistent access to AoE removal that brings token and pirate-based aggro decks to heal. Aggro Druid was still a problem for Flakmage because of all of its AoE buffs, but now Aggro Druid is falling out of favor thanks to the Voracious Reader nerf, and the remaining aggro decks rely on unbuffed minions that Arcane Flakmage has no problems with removing. With Arcane Flakmage on cleanup duty, Secret Mage is sure to reign as the king of Wild aggro decks for some time to come. So with the rise of Secret Mage, we're seeing an uptick in players getting frustrated at Secret Mage's uncanny ability to lock its opponents out of the game with secret after secret. What can you do besides switching to Secret Mage yourself? Let's take a look at Secret Mage's classic nemesis and the number 1 tech card for the Darkmoon era, Eater of Secrets. There's nothing more satisfying than destroying a board full of secrets to flip the script on Secret Mage, but in previous metas, Secret Mage was not nearly popular enough to justify running a tech card that's almost worthless in other matchups. Nowadays, Secret Mage is everywhere, and while Eater of Secrets doesn't quite fit into everything, it can be a potent mage counter for the decks it does fit into. If Secret Mage is a thorn in your side, then Eater of Secrets may be right for you, and if you're playing Secret Mage yourself, you definitely need to keep this card on your radar. Altogether, the madness at the Darkmoon Faire and its subsequent balance changes have made waves in the the Wild meta, driving some previous staples out of the meta while bringing some classic cards back to the forefront. The Wild meta is always shifting, so if you've enjoyed this spotlight, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to stay up to date with our Wild Hearthstone content. Thanks for watching!